Good afternoon. Welcome to the International School Florence Presents World Speech Day 2020, A New Harmony. We have speakers of all age ranges of the upper school, including some adults. We have speeches about topics from the crisis in Ukraine to COVID pandemic to, teenage problems like taking selfies. I hope you enjoy. Here we are.
Hello, I'm Michael Landolfa. My question for you today is, who are you? Who am I? Who are we? Okay, that's actually 3 questions, and I'm not even going to answer them for you. Instead, I'm going to try to give you a way to answer the questions, and I think it's a particularly good way. 3 weeks ago, my family and I went on a short vacation. Skiing? No. Art museums? Not exactly. We visited friends in Munich, Germany, and on a chilly Saturday morning, I took my family to the Dachau concentration camp memorial site. My kids were like, "Ooh, thanks, Dad." I've been taking students to Dachau for many years, and now my sons were old enough to have to endure the same kind of visit. What did we see and learn there? Well, we paced the Appellplatz. That's the grounds where the prisoners had to stand twice a day to be counted, also in frigid Bavarian winter without a jacket. We saw a movie with actual footage taken on April 29, 1945, which was the day when the camp was liberated. Thousands of gaunt, emaciated people who looked more like skeletons than men. We approached the barbed wire electrified fences that beckoned some prisoners to abbreviate their suffering by leaping upon them. We gingerly entered the gas chamber with the word Brausebad still printed above the entry door. And then we peered nervously into the crematorium ovens. And of course, we stared glumly at the Arbeit macht frei entry gate. I did my best to describe and explain to my sons the atrocities that took place daily in Dachau and why. Of course, I barely scratched the surface. How could the Nazi SS officers have deliberately treated other men so cruelly, so inhumanely? How did they willingly take part in a carefully constructed system designed to exploit hope, but to inflict unimaginable suffering? What were these men made of? I also tried to explain that, due to the harsh conditions, the prisoners frequently had to help each other just to make it through each day. At the Dachau exhibits, you can read a lot about prisoner solidarity. They helped each other. They were generous to each other. They shared the contents of their gift packages. They held each other up physically at the Appellplatz to be counted. And they offered each other tips just to get through the difficult days. How did these men, prisoners, find the strength, the resilience, and the pluck to overcome their ordeal? What were they made of? Those that survived as well as those that didn't? Were they heroes or cowards? Or perhaps both? I don't have the full answers to these questions, but the fact is both the despicable SS guards and their unfortunate victims were made of the same stuff that you and I are. They had the same emotions and the same aspirations. The SS guards loved their families. They had the same pride in their country as you do. They had pets and hobbies. They sang songs and painted watercolors. Also, the prisoners who suffered so much, they were just like you and me, with their petty jealousies and other psychological infirmaries. I'm not here to condemn or defend anybody. Who am I to judge? In fact, this speech is actually not about the Holocaust, nor about my family's visit to Dachau. My message is instead this. When we explore history, learning about the people who committed atrocities, as well as the heroes who rescued hundreds, we're not studying other people. We're learning about ourselves, about our own human nature. Both the SS guards and the Dachau prisoners, with their characteristics that we deplore and admire, those men are us. By examining the humanity displayed by Eleanor Roosevelt, the moral rectitude and resolve shown by Nelson Mandela, or even Pol Pot's maniacal obsession with power, we can perceive those personality traits in ourselves. Reflecting on them and their features, we come to know who we are. Have you read Night by Elie Wiesel? Primo Levi's Sequestro e un Uomo? When will you visit Dachau, Mauthausen, or Auschwitz? Exploring these and other accounts of the Holocaust teaches us about a particularly shameful but also inspiring chapter in history. But wait, it's not just history. It's my history. It's your history. It's all of our histories. We each need to learn and appreciate our history in order to truly know ourselves. We owe that much to ourselves and to each other. You've all heard the saying that those who don't learn history are condemned to repeat the errors of the past, as though the only goal of learning history were simply to help us avoid making future mistakes. Okay, there is value in that. I won't claim otherwise. But learning our history gives us so much more. Learning history and reflecting on the characters and events of the past provides us with a cheat sheet for knowing who we are. It's a window into another world, or what seems like another world, until the window suddenly transforms into a mirror, allowing us to perceive and perhaps even to understand our own humanity. My questions were, who are you? Who am I? And who are we? I've not answered those questions. But if you heard what I said, you may now be inspired to more carefully and deliberately study history, your history, so that you can answer those questions for yourself. Thank you.
A letter to the future from the present. Dear future, we held peace in our hands and felt the tug of greed, despotism, and war, only to realize that what we had was precious, even priceless, when we came closest to losing it. We betrayed those who generously sustained us without asking anything in return. The air, the water, the land that fed us. And in doing so, we betrayed our own humanity and existence. We turned away from suffering, kept silent in front of injustice, and in doing so, sided with the perpetrators. Until one day, we arrived at that critical turning point, when we are forced to confront our own humanity. And amid this chaos and despair, we could no longer deny the need for new harmony. We realized indifference is not an option. We realized that while we could not control what happened in the world, we could be the change we wanted to see in the world. We realized that real change begins within. We realized that standing up, speaking out, and not turning away from others in their time of need is what means to be a part of humanity. We realized that doing this is the only way to preserve our world, our humanity. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony." He understood that this trifecta of balance, in thought, in the spoken word, and in action, is a time-tested recipe for happiness and harmony. So, dear future, as you go forth and seek your own happiness and harmony in your everyday lives, remember Gandhi's words, live them. Seek this truth, this harmony in your friends, your family, your politicians. Because while we can't control what happens in the world, we can choose who we surround ourselves with, who we follow, who inspires us. We must not fall prey to a world that teaches us that value lies in appearances, not in substance. We must not ignore detachments between words and actions. We must not falsely believe that we can't make a difference. That to go ahead, we must go along. That strength is found in yielding power and brutality. That the meek will inherit the earth. Who wants to inherit a world of lies, chaos, and despair? It is my hope for you, the future, that you learn from the mistakes of the past, that you don't repeat them, that you seek out a new path, paved with a new harmony, in this vast but somehow small world in which we are all inextricably linked. Thank you.
Half a billion people infected, 6 million deaths, $3 trillion lost, endless lockdowns, billions stuck at home. COVID-19 created global havoc. Yet despite the pain and the suffering, it brought us together in an unimaginable way. During this crisis, there were two examples that demonstrated harmony. First, people showed a real appreciation for the health workers who cared for us. And this wasn't just in one country or continent, but instead it was worldwide. As hospital beds filled up, doctors and nurses were working around the clock, and healthcare systems were at their breaking points. Something special transpired. Across the world, in New York, Paris, Rome, Madrid, hundreds of thousands of people lined the streets giving support to our nurses and doctors. In Spain, the police lined the streets and sounded their sirens in front of local hospitals. In London, intensive care nurses were speechless as they heard the roar of clapping and banging of trash cans each night. And New York City went wild with sounds of horns, bells, and cheering. Hundreds of businesses across the world ceased their standard production and began creating thousands of masks, gloves, and sanitizers. For example, Gucci worked with their supply chain to donate over 1 million surgical masks to healthcare professionals in Tuscany. And LVMH began manufacturing hand sanitizer out of their facilities to distribute to hospitals in France. But the appreciation didn't stop there. Even on Instagram and Facebook, there are more than 500,000 posts to the hashtag #HealthcareHeroes. There is a second example that happened during COVID which demonstrates harmony. Regardless of language or nationality, religion or age, we all have the powerful desire to stay connected, even while being apart. The first wave of COVID-19 was a time during shutdowns and isolation. People's need for connection was so strong that we figured out novel ways to be together, despite the fact that we couldn't leave our homes. Technology did not isolate us, but instead, it gave us the ability to connect face-to-face in a whole new way. Video platforms such as Zoom were adopted in record numbers. In 2020, Zoom was downloaded almost 500 million times, which is a 30 times increase from the previous year. Hundreds of millions of people across the globe were talking to loved ones, tuning into live weddings, bar mitzvahs, and birthdays. And the governor of New York went as far as to pass a new law making it legal for people to get married online. In my own case, my grandfather turned 80, and we had to cancel a big party. But instead, we had around 50 people join the virtual celebrations from Austin, Texas to Auckland, New Zealand. We shared stories, laughed together, and even gave virtual toasts. But can technology really replace the face-to-face interactions with the people we love? Personally, I don't think it'll ever replace the big hugs and sitting across the table sharing a meal. But it really was the next best thing. Technology allowed us to be face-to-face and still connect despite our isolation. Now, as we look back over the past 2 years, we have experienced profound hardships and have had to adjust to a new normal. Yet, the silver lining is clear. Human beings are resilient and will innovate to maintain interconnectedness no matter the obstacles. All of these displays of human connection, support, and affection give us hope that even in difficult times, we can come together in a meaningful way, and we, as a human race, didn't let this calamity defeat us.
Harmony is something we all strive for, and that most people spend their entire lives trying to achieve. I'm a teenager, so I'm at the beginning. The beginning of what, you might ask? Well, the beginning of life, the beginning of experiences, the beginning of finding out who I am as a person. I'm scared. I'm scared most of the time. I'm scared of embarrassment, I'm scared of responsibility, and I'm scared of growing up. Finding harmony within yourself and your place in the world is a large concept to unpack. The notion that you must know and be comfortable with all aspects of yourself is, well, intimidating, to say the least. Like most teenagers, I suffer from self-esteem issues. What could I be self-conscious about? Well, I don't know, everything. My hair, my body, my voice, my laugh, the way I walk. I could write a full list. My insecurities trouble me so much that sometimes they completely prevent me from doing anything that puts me a bit out there. I'm very critical of myself and overthink situations to the max. The constant fear of failure and being judged makes it difficult to find balance. I mean, of course, my inner struggles and those of my fellow teens are compounded by what is currently happening around us today. There's a huge misconception that teenagers just stare at their phones, take selfies, and are oblivious to the enormous challenges that our planet faces today. We do care. I care. The frightening reality of climate change, for example, the last 7 years are the warmest on record. More than 1 million species are at risk for extinction. Intense wildfires and hurricanes and world leaders who are ignoring it. The unsure and scary new world of COVID and how it has altered everyone's lives. And now, the heartbreaking Russian invasion of Ukraine. So the question I want to pose to myself and to my friends, and, well, to the world, is how can we find and promote peace in our lives? I personally want to spend way less time worrying about the future and put more positive energy into the present. Be involved, be present. We should all try to be kinder and less critical of ourselves and each other. There are much larger issues to address in our communal quest for a better world. We need to re-examine our past and move forward with less prejudice and a more open-minded approach to life and our existence in this planet. Life right now is overwhelming, especially to a teenager who is caught between being a kid and an adult. But I have faith in myself and my generation that we can effect change and chart a new course for the future. Harmony is the most delicate balance in life, and we all need to support each other in our journey to achieve it. Thank you.
When I think of a new harmony, an image springs to mind of every person, regardless of race, age, gender, sexuality, viewing each other as equals. However, this got me thinking. If someone has opposing views to you that you believe are morally or ethically wrong, are you compromising your own integrity if you choose to live harmoniously alongside them? Social harmony is defined by globaljournals.org as a process of valuing, expressing, and promoting love, trust, admiration, peace, respect, generosity upon other people in any particular society, regardless of their national origin, their weight, marital status, ethnicity, colour, gender, race, age, occupation, etc. Interesting. In the past decade, I have lived and worked in 3 different countries across 2 different continents and have travelled to countless more. I always try to be respectful of other cultures, doing my research beforehand, attempting to learn a small amount of the language, though I always fail miserably at this, in an attempt to make sure that I do not unintentionally cause any offence. I have covered my shoulders and knees in the temples of Thailand. I have taken my shoes off before entering the homes of my Chinese friends in Guangzhou. And I always remember never to point with my index finger, only my thumb when in Malaysia. These are cultural expectations I am more than happy to abide by in order for there to be social harmony, as well as the fact I feel I am a visitor to these countries and should respect their culture and their traditions. However, what happens when I'm visiting a country and I am ignored in restaurants and shops and only my male companions are spoken to? Or if I ask a question and the response is given to the man and not me? Do they have the right to make me feel marginalised because culturally, in their society, women are second-class citizens and should be treated accordingly? Am I being disrespectful and culturally insensitive by not allowing the man in my travelling party to speak for me? Do I have the right to take offence merely at the thought of this? After all, I am a visitor to their country. Who has the right to social harmony in this situation? I don't have the answer to that question, but it does make me wonder, as virtually open as the world is, and now physical travel becoming much more readily available, who will have to make the compromises for social harmony to be successful? And will they be willing to do so? Thank you.
Thinking about exoplanets, looking at galaxies, and creating the possibility of stepping onto a new extraterrestrial land. The biggest wish in humanity has always been the connection with the cosmos. Over history, men and women have written, explored, studied, and discovered places that the human eye was thought to never see. The emptiness of space has bred curiosity for the longest time. The infinite amount of stars and planets around us provide a sense of loneliness, expansiveness, and solitude. We have the power to explore, but for numerous reasons, we've limited ourselves to the few planets near us. Are we scared of what's further away? You could say that we've had a pretty long time, considering we've only had more than 2,500 years to take a look at the sky. There are an innumerable number of people to name that have spent their whole lives to make celestial travels possible. Other than astrophysicists, countless amounts of poets, writers, and cinematic directors portrayed the beauty of our universe. The first known man to step outside of our comfortable planet was named Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin. He brought something new that people would talk about on the news, write articles about, tell stories, and learn from. It was as if stepping out of Earth was considered a freedom, but also a door to an incredible amount of knowledge that some people were sure to never know. After his actions, everyone was eager to know more, but another 8 years were necessary for a man to step on a different celestial planet other than Earth, which was, of course, Neil Armstrong on the moon. Let alone a woman. When was the first woman on the moon? Are we still waiting for that to happen? 1 year ago, NASA announced the landing of the first woman on the moon happening in 2024. Why are we moving so slowly? People have the desire to explore. Why hold them back? On the other side, there are people such as Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk that move quite quickly. They are preparing celestial travels not only for astronauts, but mainly for common people. They are eager to set off for space tourism. They are willing to take over and colonize planets that were never made for the human being. Those people are creating something that just 40 years ago was considered a fantasy. The challenge is, though, that they have to create suitable environments for the human beings, such as a livable atmosphere, which consists in water, fire, wind, and an ozone layer, which would, of course, protect the planet from harmful radiations. Other than that, we need to create a new harmony and balance with extraterrestrial habitats by referring to new forms of technology. Harmony in this sense means finding a form of general agreements amongst elements that are different, and even sometimes in contrast to each other. This recent and prospective technological solution is not to be conceived as an opposition to nature, but rather as capable of creating new dialogues between man and the celestial environment around us. The connection between the man and the cosmos is based on ever-changing factors and calls for continuing evaluation of the term of this union. To maintain or to create a harmony between them, we need to find, time after time, new solutions, to undertake new projects, to act even outside inherited and consolidated perspectives, by bearing in mind a sense of responsibility for the present, but also for the future generation. There will never be a definitive or a pre-established harmony between man and the cosmos per se. But for now, all we can call it is a harmony that is yet to begin, or in other words, a new harmony.
People are always talking about love, to love your family, to love your friends, to love nature, and to love your life. However, today I want to talk about such a great love and creating such a great harmony. The first thing that I would like to ask you is, do you think that you love yourself enough? By asking this, I mean when you look yourself in the mirror, what you're feeling. What do you feel about yourself? Some people might look in the mirror and start to worry. Is this outfit suitable to this occasion? Will they laugh at me? Will they discover that I gained 2 kilos of weight? Will they judge my aesthetic level? We always question and deny ourselves because of aesthetic level standards of others, but forget that everyone should have their unique look, whether they are eye-catching or invisible. I strongly believe that many people have those worries, no matter gender, nationality, or age. But still confirm those worries are essential to our life's development and improvement. However, it should be in different amount. By truly love yourself means to accept yourself unconditionally, to love every organ, every hair strand, and every part of the body. This self-actualization is often lost by youth, which is because they don't accept their imperfections. Or in other words, they aren't confident in themselves. They cannot establish this harmony of beauty in themselves. If the world is a giant garden, then there will be numerous different types of flowers. God wanted a beautiful garden, so he planted many and many different seeds because he believed that the garden will only be beautiful. Every flower has a unique characteristics, so the visitor will be bored by this breathtaking landscape. Not everyone can become roses, but if you want, you can surely become a unique jasmine or a daisy. If you like, you can become a little flower on the side of the road, or thousands and millions of other types of flowers. This flowers at the end will propose the most beautiful harmony in the whole world, because it's composed of different flowers, creating a balance between them. However, today, the way to establish the harmony of beauty and to reconcile with those tiny imperfections is an endless journey. To complete this journey, we have to learn not to live for others, learn to find our unique self-confidence, and learn to appreciate our true self. Thank you.
I went into the woods with my friends the other week, and we were wa- I went into the friends. I went into the woods with my friends the other week, and we were walking together when all of a sudden we found this escape. We've been trying to build a fort recently, so I thought we might find some building materials inside. And I was like, hey, let's check this out. And so we went inside, and it was incredible. There were little water wells, there were tons of perfect materials for our fort, like a lot of coal and iron. We even found red hot lava. And then, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a giant mechanical skeleton emerged from the darkness and attacked us. So I did what anyone would do in this situation. I drank a healing potion and pulled out my sword and engaged in battle. Unfortunately, the giant evil skeleton did hit me in the leg with an arrow. But of course, I didn't feel any pain because this was a video game. But what did I feel? I felt fear. I didn't want my character to die and have to restart the game. I felt excitement. After all, I was exploring a new world and taking on novel challenges. And I felt connection, because I was working in harmony with my friends towards a common goal. And I've been feeling all of those things for a long time. You see, my life has been, in part, a life lived online. An expansive, barely imaginable, unlimited, new digital world. When I moved to Italy 5 years ago, online games like Minecraft were how I kept in touch with dear friends across the ocean. When the world stopped during the pandemic, the online characters of me and my friends didn't need to social distance. We still got together, worked together, and critically took down giant skeletons. So why is my experience playing Minecraft with my friends important? Well, I think it matters to you because it is in part your future. I've seen a lot of talk about this emerging metaverse. These incoming digital spaces where we will soon spend important parts of our lives connecting, working, and playing. For so many young people, those spaces are already here. People like me have been playing and using these online digital spaces for years already. I sense that they'll become an even bigger part of my life. That will be good and bad. Of course, it must always remain important to be with other people in person, and we should be careful to not let digital worlds totally replace our real worlds. But I also know that those digital worlds have been very real in my own life. So when you are trying to figure out how the digital metaverse worlds of tomorrow will shape life, first look at assembly. And then recognize that there's a lot of power in those online spaces. The power to talk and connect. The power to fight together. The power to share a real human connection. To be in harmony with one another. So while we should probably proceed with caution, there's nothing we should blindly fear. Except giant evil skeletons. Thank you.
Harmony is peace. Harmony is bliss. Harmony is beauty. Harmony is something that should be included into every person's life, making it easier and lighter. However, most of the time, what our lives are filled with are the sound of the slamming doors, the shout of people who are picking fights, the cry for help of the lost souls, and the despair of a sincere heart after being trampled on. Loneliness, fear, and helplessness are drawing people's souls like a flood, making them lose track of themselves. Pleas to be saved from the world's quarrels are higher than ever. People in the big, deep abyss are imploring an imaginary savior that will hold their hands, liberate their trapped eyes, and save them from the heavy world. They are yearning for a world in which darkness no longer dominates. A beautiful world in which every person is treated equally. A world where quarrels are replaced by the laughter of the blissful citizens, where elders and children are living days of delight and pleasure. Sadly, life is a joke with no punchline. According to the Collins Dictionary, the harmony of something is the way in which its parts are combined into a pleasant arrangement. Know that most of the time, the cold walls of the hospital have heard more sincere prayers than the sacred churches. The apparently soft and gentle autumn winds are more depressing than the winter ones. The scarred and bleeding soldiers have heard more solemn vows and pledges than a faithful priest. Then, aren't the sincere prayers in front of the cold walls of a hospital more pleasant than the ones heard in the church? Then, aren't the solemn vows and pledges heard by a scarred and bleeding soldier more pleasant than a smarty swear heard by a priest? Everything is two-faced. Everything has its harmony. In some, it is more evident, while in others it is less, but it still exists. There are many people who are attempting to escape from this hopeless world, but also many coming back, believing in improvements and progress. In the end, things remain unchanged. Then why can expectations still be seen in it? That's because people are starting to realize that in the deep abyss, there are some traces of tiny twinkling stars. They are not as bright as the sun, but enough for comforting the desperate people by realizing that nothing is perfect. Nowhere is ideal, and no one is flawless. It is silly to determine whether something is good or bad. There is no absolute harmony. Thank you.
The storm of information that strikes me daily has become unsustainable. So much that I was disoriented and had to reduce the amount of sources that produce these ongoing streams of information. On my daily basis, I hear the same content over and over again, coming from totally different sources: radio, television, phone notifications, articles, social media, and so on. We are well aware about the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. The news was immediate, and it wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for the power of globalization. But for the very same reason, the world became aware of a microorganism that we now know as COVID-19. In Italy, the national sources of information have perhaps forgotten about COVID and only deal with the Russian-Ukrainian crisis. And I, as all the people living here, am filled and packed with information. That's when I had to come to the conclusion that a knowledgeable life has to be in harmony with the amount of information an individual receives. That is what really drove me to write these words and share them with you. In the 1930s, a group of British library scientists calculated the cumulative codified information base, in other words, all the written information ever existed. They estimated that it would double every 30 years. That means that with the coming of a new generation, the world's knowledge would double. Not bad, you might say. Well, what if I told you that in the 1970s, that number got recalculated and it shrank just to 7 years? Meaning that at the time a first grade student reaches grade 8, there will be a totally new body of knowledge in the world. It is estimated that by a few years after the coming of the internet, the number will reduce to 11 hours. Nick Bontis, the author of the book Information Bombardment, jokes about this and says that when you will go to sleep on a Saturday night and wake up on a Sunday morning, you will be half as stupid as the night before. He also affirms that the only scarce resource left today is our attention and our attention span and how we choose to use the next 24 hours. Information bombardment can cause changes at cognitive and thinking levels. Therefore, we, as individuals, as citizens of the world, should learn how to classify and diversify information for the sake of a harmonious relationship between the world and ourselves. Thank you.
I often pride myself on my self-appointed title of serial procrastinator. Believe me, it's not every day that you meet someone who can carry out all of their daily activities in less than 40 minutes at 11 p.m. I'd say I'm one in a million, but really, I'm not. There are an endless number of people who possess similar talents, but they spend entirely too much time trying to get rid of these bad habits. At this point, this speech is probably starting to sound like one of those leave us kids alone type of things. It's not, just bear with me. I'm sure most of you watching this have social media apps like Instagram or TikTok, or even Facebook if you have yet to join us in the 21st century. How many times have you seen a video, a post, or even an advertisement around the city promoting some aspect of what we deem to be the healthy lifestyle? I'll bet you saw at least one today. I most certainly have. With all the tips and tricks I've involuntarily gathered, I could easily write the new encyclopedia of how to be the best person you can be. All jokes aside, constantly being told to improve every aspect of your life is frustrating, annoying, and to some extent, even harmful. It's like when you're cleaning your room and a parent walks in and tells you to tidy up. We've all been there, right? Because what is this perfect lifestyle that everyone's talking about? What's the big secret? Going to bed at 10 p.m.? Having oatmeal for breakfast? Being self-confident or having loads of friends? Always giving everything your best effort? It's not realistic, and it puts so much unnecessary pressure on millions of people who think that by eating a granola bar instead of a chocolate one, their life will be magically turned upside down. We, collectively, as a society, need to come to terms with the fact that no matter how much you exercise or how self-positive you feel or how you spend your Saturday night, no one is ever going to achieve perfection. This American dream, this mystical vision, is going directly against the happiness of many individuals. We really need to start normalizing normality. So my point is that it's okay to binge watch a Netflix series instead of going out on weekend. It's okay to hand in an essay a day late because you were too busy staring at the ceiling. It's okay to eat leftover pizza for breakfast. You're allowed to wake up and decide you very much dislike humanity. You're allowed to hate the way you look and wear baggy clothes. You're allowed to not put all of your energy into something because maybe you're lacking that energy and you need it for the things that you choose to prioritize. As cliche as it sounds, it's okay to not be okay. For as long as I've known the meaning of the word, I've had extremely high expectations for myself. When I started ninth grade, I was catapulted into a very new scenario, especially academic-wise. I was used to understanding and enjoying lessons, having good relationships with my classmates, and getting to school each day with lots of energy and a smile. I slowly started losing interest in things I didn't understand. I detached from my classmates, and I did my best to uphold the self-imposed reputation that only I saw. I wanted the best grades, even though I struggled more with the subjects. I wanted to be a social butterfly, even though I'm not that comfortable around people. I wanted to be the type of person who wakes up with a smile and a heart full of love for the world. I discovered soon enough that I was going to be none of those things. At first, I was unsettled by this new image of myself, because it was one that I thought I would never accept. Yet, here I am. Did I go to bed at 10 p.m. last night? No. I was up until much later because Gilmore Girls is really catchy. Did I get fruit for a snack? No. I had a chocolate muffin. Did I get 100 on my last math test? Again, no. Would I say I'm happy at the moment? Well, I'm not ecstatic, but I'm not in the depths of despair either. And that's okay. Ever so slowly, I'm finding comfort in the things that make yours truly, well, yours truly. Maybe I'm not the best version of myself, but I am the best version of myself that I can be right now. Thank you.
To jest jak śmiecha. Eine Welt voller Tränen. El mundo es grande. It's a world of fear. Those were the beginning lyrics to the Disney song, It's a Small World in 4 languages. With so much diversity and so many people from so many different countries and cultures, our world often feels overwhelming. It can be hard, literally and figuratively, to understand each other. It can be hard to work together. And so we ask ourselves, how can we bring more harmony, more happiness to our world? How can we make it full of that laughter and hope? Well, I think this children's song has a good answer, one we should remember today. There's so much that we share, and it is time that we are aware it's a small world after all. In order to have harmony in a world with so many different cultures, ideas, beliefs, and expectations, I believe it's important to have empathy. We must try to share an understanding of other people's perspectives, understand what makes our neighbors happy or what makes them sad. Let's practice this together. We can even start with the small things. For me, in middle school, that might look like being empathetic in a basketball game. Some days I might hit a big shot and win, and other days I might miss some moves. On the same day, the same game, I could feel totally different. Energized and powerful, or downcast and hopeless. And if I try to imagine myself in the other team's shoes when I play, I find that situations are not far from each other, and there's so much in common. So my question to you is this: where in your life can you imagine your reality being so different? Where can you see yourself in someone else's shoes? Where can you practice empathy and build kindness? Today, we should take the opportunity to challenge ourselves and think about how we affect the people around us, and to pursue new harmony through collective understanding. And in the end, no matter different perspectives, there is, as the song states. So it is one moon, one golden sun, and although the mountains divide and the oceans are wide, it's a small world after all. Understanding your opponent's perspective during a middle school basketball game may not seem so important. But if we learn to empathize with others when we are young, in middle school, then maybe when the world is in our hands, we'll have learned how to forgive, how to say, I'm sorry, how to help those in need. Maybe, just maybe, we'll have gotten closer to that new harmony. Our differences across the basketball court, or those seas that are wide, might make us feel like we're separate and different. But it's up to us to do the work that allows us to know in our hearts that Mali, yes, yes. Es ist ein kleiner Welt, ein piccolo mondo. It's a small, small world.
Une nouvelle harmonie entre l'identité réelle et l'identité virtuelle. Depuis l'essor d'Internet dans les années 1990, puis avec l'arrivée des jeux en ligne et surtout les réseaux sociaux, la quasi-totalité des internautes disposent d'une identité virtuelle. Bien que l'identité virtuelle puisse être librement choisie et manipulée, il semble que, dans la plupart des cas, les internautes s'efforcent de maintenir une certaine cohérence avec leur identité réelle. Cependant, avec l'apparition du concept de métaverse, il se pourrait que l'identité réelle et l'identité virtuelle deviennent de plus en plus décorrélées. Qu'est-ce que les métaverses ? Ce sont des univers parallèles aux nôtres dans lesquels nous évoluerons et interagirons comme dans la vie réelle. Nous livrons à de la socialisation, des jeux ou même à un travail. La première apparition du terme métaverse a été dans Snow Crash, le samouraï virtuel, un roman de Neil Stephenson publié en 1990. Puis, le film de Steven Spielberg, Ready Player One, en 2018, a relayé une certaine vision d'un monde virtuel. Avec l'avènement des NFT, Non-Fungible Tokens, certains jeux vidéo en ligne ont commencé à être assimilés à des métaverses dans lesquels chacun peut revendiquer un accès exclusif à une parcelle d'un territoire donné et intervenir comme bon lui semble sur son apparence. Fin octobre 2021, Facebook a mis le concept sur le devant de la scène lorsque Mark Zuckerberg a annoncé la création d'un tel monde parallèle. L'entreprise a même changé de nom au passage pour adopter celui de Meta et mieux marquer son intention de développer un environnement qui serait le futur de la socialisation sur Internet. Zuckerberg a décrit le métaverse ainsi. Vous pourrez y faire presque tout ce que vous êtes en mesure d'imaginer. Vous rassembler avec vos amis et votre famille, travailler, apprendre, jouer, faire du shopping, créer. Il apparaît donc évident que l'identité virtuelle prend une place de plus importante dans notre société. Cela soulève de nombreuses questions
quant aux interactions et à l'impact sur l'identité réelle. Parfois réduite à la seule présence textuelle, l'identité des internautes se trouve dissociée des paramètres habituels qui font l'identité sociale dans le monde réel, tels que le genre, la classe sociale, la couleur de peau, etc. Les détracteurs d'Internet s'alarment du fait que cette déconnexion permettrait toutes les tricheries et exposerait l'identité des internautes à la suspicion permanente. De plus, l'identité numérique peut avoir de grandes conséquences sur la vie réelle. En effet, une mauvaise identité numérique, irréputation, avec des informations compromettantes sur la toile, peut discréditer une personne lors d'une recherche d'emploi ou pour une relation sentimentale. À l'inverse, les utopistes avancent que le libre choix de l'identité virtuelle permettrait de s'émanciper des assignations identitaires et des formes de domination en vigueur dans le monde réel. L'identité virtuelle ouvre donc d'immenses perspectives de créativité et de liberté, mais il faudra rester vigilant à conserver un certain équilibre et une harmonie avec l'identité réelle. Thank you.
Let me recall a nightmare I cannot seem to forget. My parents had lost their jobs a couple days prior, and I was walking home as I spotted a huge bus tire rolling at me with incredible velocity. It collided with my fragile bones, and my next recollection was in my hospital bed. I lay wounded, completely isolated from the rest of the hospital. As I sense a sharp pain, I see countless patients rolling in and out of the surgery room. I, however, am disregarded, as if my injury were non-existent. When my parents arrived, they explained that despite my insurance, we do not have enough money to bribe the doctors to complete my treatment. Later in my dream, my parents attempt to sue the public bus system for allowing for such a mishap, but instead, the court rules me as guilty, instead of the faulty driver and bus. My dream ends with crowds of people laughing at my stupidity, because, of course, people are going to lose their jobs if they do not politically align with their employers. Of course, public services will malfunction because the money that is intended to be used for their operation is instead used for private gains. Of course, hospital staff will only treat those that bribe them. And of course, people will be deprived of due process. And of course, the court's decision will not consider justice for the ordinary human. I am now awake, aware, aweless, and a wanting truth, not having shared the contents of an eerie nightmare, but the reality of corrupt states. Economic loss, poverty, inequality, public sector dysfunctionality, rigged political systems, impunity, cynicism. Just a few of the many effects victims of corruption suffer from. Those living my nightmare. In countries like Iraq, Colombia, and Mexico, countries whom Transparency International has ranked highest on the Corruption Perception Index, white lies turn into bigger bluffs. Bigger bluffs turn into inescapable hypocrisies. Inescapable hypocrisies turn the state into a red country on the index, from white to red. It is not a coincidence that some of the happiest countries in the world, Denmark, Germany, and Canada, are identified as the least corrupt, the most transparent. My generation needs to find the strength to trust truth, hatching harmony, defeating demoralization, removing the red cover, and recasting the world as transparent. Thank you.
One of my favorite memories was when I was in 4th grade, so around 10 years old. I would go out to the side of my house, my book in hand, and search for my favorite walnut tree.
I would climb up it like a monkey, sit on the highest branch, which might not have been the safest thing, and read. Anyone who has climbed a tree before would know how that feels. It's like you're on the top of the world. I would stay up there in my perch, watching birds make their nests and squirrels scamper up and down the trees, reading my fantasy novels for hours on end. Just like that tree was my refuge, trees are a refuge for innumerable animals too. If I didn't have my walnut tree, I would be devastated. But if those animals didn't have their trees, they wouldn't survive. This is why I am here, speaking with you today, because I believe that trees need to be protected, and that deforestation is a threat to us all. Well, what is deforestation? Deforestation is the action of clearing a large area of trees. This affects everything around it, including animals, the planet, and us humans. The trees are home to thousands of species and provide shelter, food, and other unique resources for those animals. Complex ecosystems are disrupted and even disappear completely as more forests are destroyed. But how does it affect us? Around 1 billion people live inside or near forests and rely on the natural resources those forests provide. According to the UN's 2020 State of the World's Power Report, 3/4 of the planet's freshwater comes from forests and watersheds, and half of the world's population depends on that water for their drinking, agriculture, and industry. That affects a lot of people. As if that wasn't enough, deforestation affects the planet too. Forests absorb the carbon dioxide that we produce, reducing the greenhouse gases. The act of deforestation on its own accounts for nearly 20% of greenhouse gas emissions. This is why stopping deforestation is a vital part in reducing climate change. You must be thinking, why would anyone cut down so many trees when all it's doing is harming the planet, wildlife, and our own well-being? Well, that's a really good question, and I was confused too. Deforestation is being driven by logging, human migration and population increases, extractive industries such as mining, oil, and gas, and finally, transport and infrastructure projects, such as expanding towns and cities. However, the main reason behind all this is agriculture. The growing world population means an increase in food production and consumption, leading to most forest areas being turned into farms. Now, solutions are necessary but challenging to implement. Let's start with what has happened already. In 2020, more than 100 countries decided to end and reverse deforestation by 2030, signing an agreement at the 26th Annual United Nations Climate Change Conference in Glasgow. However, we are still in this crisis. Here is what we can do moving forward. We could all start buying sustainably harvested wood products, stop using so much paper, avoid making and buying products with palm oil, and plant new trees as much as possible. Also, if people adopt sustainable agricultural practices or use new farming techniques, the need for land will go down. Forests can be restored by replanting the trees in cleared areas and letting those ecosystems repair over time. As the areas get reforested, the animals will come back, the water systems will be rebuilt, and carbon dioxide will get absorbed again. Education is key. The things that we can do to help are achievable, but we need to spread more awareness. I want to stay up in my tree, watching the animals and reading forever. But I'm very concerned that the next generation will not have a tree to climb or animals to watch. I am going to start helping the planet by doing the first thing I can, by adopting new ways and educating people, so that we can all make better choices in regard to the future of our trees. Thank you.
Have you ever missed the comfort of your home, the hug of a loved one, or something we did not notice until it was lost? We have all at least once in our lifetime harbored one of these feelings in our chest. It can be something as small as a favorite pen we lost in class,
or something as big as the possibility of going outside without fearing that a bomb will land on your head. On the morning of February 24th, the population of Ukraine woke up to face a new reality. Even though I was miles away from where the surreal reality was taking place, I recall waking up with an immediate feeling that something was off. I entered the kitchen and saw my mom looking intensely at her iPad. War had begun, she said. I could not believe my ears nor my eyes when I saw videos of missiles hitting buildings, hospitals, major structures and monuments that mark a long history of our fight for liberty and democracy that has been time and again taken away. It is hard to wake up every morning and see the news showing dead bodies in the streets you used to once walk on, and burning homes of families that you may have known. Then having to call your loved ones in tears and in fear to make sure they're okay, praying that they will pick up the phone. It is impossible to imagine the terror which children, teenagers, adults, elderly, hiding in the underground metro stations experience, with explosions and gunshots echoing all through the night and continuing throughout the day. I'm one of the few lucky Ukrainians who has everything on the list. I have food, water, heating, gas, electricity, and a safe home. Now it has become a privilege if you have at least one of these boxes ticked, not to mention all your legs and arms still attached. Now it has become a privilege to have a future when there is nothing remaining of your past. Now it has become a privilege to still be alive. I haven't been in Ukraine for nearly 5 years, and I'm terrified of the thought that I will have nothing to come back to. That we will have nothing to come back to. I shudder at the thought that is close to being a reality of nothing remaining of my country that once had cities rich in culture and beautiful landscapes, and then thinking if anyone will ever return and help bring back the past, if that is even possible. However, there is a shred of hope the Ukrainians still have to hold on to. Never in the history of Ukraine has there been so much unity and love between us as there is now. Over a phone call the other day, my grandmother in Ukraine reported that she had never felt a closer bond with strangers after sharing a couple of laughs despite the gravity in the air while waiting in a 4-hour line at the supermarket. As horrible and as devastating as the situation is, where over 2 million Ukrainians have fled from their motherland, several cities surrounded by Russian forces, and the city of Kharkiv and Mariupol lying in rubble, and the lives of many civilians at stake, I believe there is a positive outcome for the Ukrainian people as well as for the rest of the world. Looking at the inharmonious state of things around the country, with the lives of every person living on the Ukrainian territory disrupted, possibly, maybe even definitely, of other people who have once lived in Ukraine or have a relative there, or are living in Europe, I think that we will find a new harmony, a harmony between one another. I have faith that humanity has a possibility of a bright future, looking at the amount of individuals opening the doors of their homes to fleeing refugees, volunteers flying across the world to fight for a country that isn't even their own, people I saw here at the supermarket buying items requested by donation drives, and citizens from all over the world gathering together to show their disapproval of the war. I want to hope that we will begin to be more friendly, more kind, and more human. So, I believe that with luck, once the situation will hopefully dissipate, the whole world will not lose this feeling of unity, hospitality, and the genuine desire to help out others. Thank you.
Sometimes I feel like a This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Islands, to the Redwood Forest, to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. How many roads must a man walk down before you can call him a man? Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us on the sky. Another head hangs lonely, child is slowly taken. The violence caused such silence, who are we mistaken? These songs have one thing in common. They're all protest songs from crucial eras, events, tragedies in human history. Protesting injustices like slavery, the Great Depression, the Vietnam War, the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and more. It may not seem immediately evident that music has the power to enact change, but time and again, artists have sought refuge in music and utilized it as a tool to enliven, convince, or even indoctrinate the masses. Well, these are all songs throughout the decades, from the late 1800s to the famed protest music era of the 1960s to the 1990s. Protest music is not something that merely comes and goes periodically, but is rather a consistency across decades and cultures globally. In certain nations oppressed under tyrannical regimes, music has been used to indoctrinate entire populations, from North Korea in modern times to Nazi Germany during World War II. In other nations where talking has been expressly forbidden about certain topics, music has been used as a form of communication and to create a sense of solidarity among those suffering injustice. The African American spirituals of the 17 and 1800s in the United States are an excellent example of this coded approach, utilizing these songs to send messages to each other into the fields without vicious overseers fully understanding the meaning. The world sees itself again at a crucial moment in human history. With the war in Ukraine, the COVID pandemic, the impending doom of inflation, the calamity of climate change, the rising and militant nationalism in many countries, the widespread homophobia plaguing even free nations, humans need balm for the soul, something to unite us and to soothe our woundedness. It is easy to predict that change is on the rise. In fact, we will likely witness an increase in subtle or not so subtle protest music, but we will likely also see a rise in other forms of protest as well. In fact, it has already begun. Holocaust survivor and preeminent writer Elie Wiesel famously said, "There may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest." It is my hope, and indeed my belief, that now is the time to come together, to unify, to call to action, and to stand up for what we believe in, to fight for the little guy, to help the downtrodden, to save the planet, to show our humanity, to accept that love is love, and to not stand idly by as bystanders in a world that desperately needs us. Thank you for coming and listening. Thank you to everyone online and in the room for being with us today. ISF wishes you a wonderful rest of your World Speech Day. Thank you.